everybody has got some coffee or something to drink or just to be comfortable and enjoy the ride with us for tonight. I can maybe share a quick story before we start. So when I prepared for this session, I had a camera in front of the laser machine and I was moving it up and down and in and out and zooming in and zooming out, and it just wasn't working. I couldn't get anything or everything in the shot just with it standing as it is. So earlier in the week, I decided to make a little device which we can use. I can show you quickly, which Billy politely dubbed the contraption. So we'll get back to that. Thank you so much, Billy. I think that will be its name from now on going forward.
Very sophisticated contraption. You can want a VSC. You can call it a VSC.
We can get going. So, all right, the first thing that we need to say is when you do the laser adjustment or your mirror alignment, when you do the laser alignment, I highly recommend, be safe, do it on your own. Don't have anybody push the pulse button for you. They're gonna push it at the wrong time, or they're gonna think you say push and you're not saying, and it's happened so many times and it's probably gonna keep on happening. So my first bit of advice is please stay safe and do this. Somebody can be next to you, assist you, but if you do the alignment, push the pulse button yourself. Don't let anybody else do that.
Carlo, on that point, I actually don't let anybody else stand in the room anymore when I'm doing the laser alignment. My wife was standing on the opposite end of the room when they installed the laser and the beam actually hit her. And I imagine if that hit her in the eye or something, which it could very well have done because we had no idea where it's going. You're still doing your initial setup. And it actually hit her and it burnt her on the shoulder. And you should be wearing proper glasses and things, but at least you can do is, if you can stand out the way, but you don't know where that beam ends up necessarily.
Yes, and normally when you push the button, when you start, you are not close to the source or the first mirror. They are usually in opposite corners. So yes, that is a very valid point that you're making. So please keep that in mind. So with that out of the way, when we do the alignment, we need to know what the objective is. What are we trying to achieve? If we look at these options we have on screen, this very first option is what we're aiming at. This whole exercise is about getting your laser perpendicular to the lens and hitting it smack bang in the middle of the lens. I've seen so often at arriving at somebody's place, assisting them to adjust the mirrors and to align the laser. And they spend such a lot of time getting to the laser head and getting in the center of that little hole. And the last bit of adjustment, which is just as important, if not more important than any of the rest, is basically neglected, and they just check if anything comes out of the nozzle, and if that looks like it's fairly in the middle, then they go with it. You lose a lot of laser power if you have a setup like this, where you might be hitting it in the middle, but your laser exits at an angle. You won't get the desired power or the full potential of the power at that point. It can also happen where your mirror could be a bit further back and you don't hit it in the center, but it exits the nozzle at the center, and you are under the impression that you're getting it in the middle, and again you're losing laser power. This option is also something which occurs. You can hit it perpendicular to the lens, but you're not in the middle of the lens, and the laser power that you're going to get there is not going to be the full potential of that. So that is the main objective. That is why we do what we do, to get the laser beam from the tube all the way around in any any place on the laser bed, you want it to be in the middle of the lens, and it's got to be perpendicular. That's how you're going to maximize and get the full potential of your laser to not only cut faster, but you can have a cleaner cut, and you can have the straightest cut that you can have if that is your setup. So while we are on the topic of the laser heads, I'm just going to jump a little bit forward. And this is not a topic where we're going to get to today. This will be in the next topic, the laser head, but it is just something that I want to make you aware of. This part is representing the front of the head. Now, please excuse my talent of drawing this little laser head, but the hole where the laser enters is not guaranteed to be perfectly in line with the mirror. I've seen this with numerous machines. I myself, I have a few machines, and some of them actually are like this. One of the machines that I have is one of the machines that Gerard sells, and that machine is not like that. So I would think that that is a better quality machine and you don't have that issue. But I have seen lasers where you go through all the trouble and you align the mirror and your laser to enter that hole smack bang in the middle, and you struggle to get it in the center of the lens. So there are ways of determining that. As I say, we're not going to go into that today. We'll cover all the rest, but that is definitely something that you need to keep in mind when you do the alignment. Let's get to the adjustment of these setting screws on our contraption. So I'm just going to go to another view quickly and turn this. So that we can see what happens there. So to understand the adjustment and know what happens when you do adjust it, it is important that you know what these various screws do, what the purpose is, and what happens.
Sorry, Carlo.
Yes.
You're right at the bottom of the screen where you're busy working. We're battling to see what you're pointing at. Other way, yeah.
Thanks a lot. Let me do that. These setting screws, all they do is they push the lens holder away. And these two screws, all they do is they pull the, I'm sorry, I said the lens holder, the mirror holder, they pull the mirror holder towards the stand or the mount which it's mounted on. That being said, that is how you get a setting to the one way and to the other way. And if I can illustrate that quickly on this setting, let me just move out there a little bit. So this is basically a side-on view of how that setting works. So the two little silver, as it is on my holder, it is an adjustment knob. Usually you use an Allen key to adjust that. It has a spring. It goes through the frame or the mount. It doesn't screw into the mount, but it screws into the mirror holder. It doesn't need to screw all the way in. It just needs to grab it. And I've found on most machines, if you go halfway in, that's perfectly fine. And I'll explain why that is, why I do it that way just a little bit later. The adjustment screw, which has a little lock, when you turn it, the thread is in the mounting bracket, and as you turn it, this moves in and out and it pushes the holder away, and when you turn it in, it moves away from the holder, this spring pushes that screw back, which in turn pulls the mirror towards the mount. So that's just to give you an idea of exactly how that works. So I believe that once you understand how it works, it makes it a bit easier to figure out when you do the adjustments, what happens when you do the setting. So I'm going to go back to our contraption setting. And I think actually I'm going to turn it a little bit more this way. So at the moment you see I've got the setting, I've turned these adjustment knobs all the way in. The reason I do that is to see what is the amount of movement that I've got there. So an easy way for me to check and to measure that, you could use a vernier, dive in there and see if you can get it in, but in a machine, getting in there with a vernier and trying to measure that is not very easy. So what I use is either an Allen key or you can use a drill bit as well. And I have found that when I put this on the maximum, this Allen key goes in all the corners just, and this is a 5mm Allen key. So I have 5mm of movement from the holder to there. And any machinist will tell you that when you do a setup of a machine, when you start, any setting that you can do is you put it in the center. If you put that in the center, you have equal movement either way. If you don't start in the center and you start at max, and I need to move this away, I can't because it's already at the max. If I start with it all the way back and I need to move it back, I can't because it's already at the back. So that's why it's important, or when I do the alignment, all my mirrors, I check what is the maximum amount of movement and I go to the center. So I've used this Allen key. This is a 5mm. If that is my maximum, that means I can use the 2.5mm and I can use that to gauge this, and I can pull it in, and once that is touching, give me a second, it's a timely exercise. So once it's touching on all the corners, I know it's fairly even and I have equal movement all the way around. Now you'll also see these springs, they're pushed out a little bit, pulling the mirror holder in. And this is the reason why I said I don't turn these all the way through or maximum into the mirror holder, because if you do, you compress this spring before you start adjusting that. And if you do that, you have less amount of movement because you can only have so much movement forward up until where the spring is maximum compressed. Then it won't move any further. You won't be able to push it. So that is the first exercise that I do when I start adjusting the mirrors. I go through the same exercise with mirror 1, mirror 2 and mirror 3 on the head.
Maybe just a comment, Dirk. The easy way to know that those silver ones in this case are turned in all the way, or the springs or whatever are not working anymore, is if you're doing your other adjustments that Carol is going to show and you don't see a result, which you sometimes see on a lot of chats that people say they're turning the thing, but there's no result. It means that those other two are in way too tight.
Yeah, they are then maxed out one side or the other, and normally they are turned into tight because we are intent on, if you see something loose, you tighten it. You think it shouldn't be loose, it should be tightened, you tighten them. And exactly that what Billy says happens. All right, so I'm just gonna turn this guy around, and oops, sorry, and I need to change our view and find the spot. Okay, so this was a fun build. It works in a way. I ran out of time making my adjustable laser mount, but this will have to do. It is adjustable, it's slotted, it can move left and right or forward and backwards there, and it can move up and down for the tube in the front and the back. That is rather important. I have seen machines that don't have that. If your machine doesn't have that and you do struggle with alignment, I will highly recommend finding somebody or see if you can manufacture something or make a plan to make your tube or the brackets where the tube lies on to make that adjustable. It really makes a difference and it makes your life easier. You can get a much better cut on that. So let's say we start with a fresh install. Like Billy said, we don't know where the laser beam is going to go. So even if your machine was cutting and you want to do a fresh setup completely from the start, you go through the exercise by getting your alignment or your settings in the center. So you have equal setting forward and backwards. You did that on mirror 1. When you fire that laser onto the mirror, you won't know where it's going to go. So for that, I use something like a piece of MDF, which is rather big, and I start with it first before the first mirror and whoops, fire the laser. It's actually working. And see where it is. You can slightly move that away and see that it's in the vicinity of the mirror. I'm not going to spend too much time on the tube, but when you install the tube, we were talking about the height adjustments on the tube. I would recommend having the tube ever so slightly higher in the front and lower at the back. The reason for that being, if there's any water bubbles in your tube, they will go up and it'll be easier to get them out. Your tube does not need to be, it doesn't need to be squared, doesn't need to line up with anything. Your tube could shoot right from the top for that matter, it doesn't matter. But I would suggest using the brackets that it's intended for. So once you're happy that it's going to hit the mirror, take a piece of MDF, and before you fire it the first time, put it in your machine. You're not going to be close by to hold it or see. Make it stand with something. Walk around to the machine to the keypad or wherever you pulse the laser. Do a pulse, walk around back and see where the mark on the test piece is or the MDF. If it's fairly in the middle, move it a little bit away, but not extremely. Fire it again and move it ever so slightly so that you can see which direction the laser is going. So here is my laser. So when you start firing it, you should be able to see if it's going this way or that way. And once you know where it's going, you know how to adjust and how to compensate for it. So when you do this first adjustment, unless you are lucky and it goes for the mirror, don't use the adjustments to try and compensate for that. It's more likely than anything else that it's gonna miss that by a long shot, unless you've been through the exercise of adjusting and twisting the mirror on the base. Most machines, the mirrors, they have some kind of setting here. where you can loosen it, or some of the machines, this stands on a single pillar, if I can call it that, and you can twist it and unlock it. The adjustments for the mirror, you only want to use that to fine-tune the setting. And when I say fine-tune, just to get the laser parallel to the machine. So the first setting, loosen those, or depending on how your machine works, and adjust that sideways so that you get at least close to this mirror when it's in the furthest position. Try and get it as close as possible without using the setting screws on there. Once you've got that, you can lock these screws or lock that setting. If for any reason your laser is straight but it's either high or low, the only thing that you can adjust is your tube. Drop it at the back. If you need to bring it up, you need to drop the tube at the back. Or if you need to bring it down, bring the whole tube down and adjust both of those and bring them down to bring the tube down. That's the only way that you set the height on that if you're going from that mirror to that mirror. So once you're hitting that mirror, then we can start with the adjustment screws. So what we do with those adjustment screws is not trying to get the laser in the middle of this mirror. That is not the objective. The objective with those settings is to get the laser to hit the mirror on the same spot when it's in this position as it would if it is in that position. So I normally make these little targets. I can just maybe show a little bit closer. And I put them over the mirror. It just gives me an indication of where we are. But as I say, when you're not going for the center of the mirror, you make a mark there. And when I put this on the mirror, although I do use masking tape, I use a single piece of masking tape, and I put the target behind that and I put it over the mirror. I never put masking tape on the mirror itself. If you burn through that, the residue burns onto the mirror, damages the mirror, and it's a pain in the butt to clean. So I would put something like that on the mirror. I would do the fire. It'll make a mark. Unfortunately, my state-of-the-art laser here, I tried it many times, trust me, it does not make a mark on there. So, you on this position, you do a pulse, you move it back, hopefully your laser runs a bit smoother than mine, and you make another mark over there. Depending on where that mark is, you now use the adjustments on this mirror to get the mark onto to get the furthest mark onto the closest mark. So adjusting that, you normally should not need to adjust. I'm just going to pull this up again so that we can see the back of this one. You don't need to adjust that one. You should be able to achieve the adjustment by using that one and using that one. So if you use the furthest one at the bottom, as you turn that in and out, the mirror pivots on these two. So that'll be your left and right. If you need to move it up and down, you use the top one, and as you turn that in and out, the mirror holder pivots on these two. So you can go up and down, left and right. You don't need to use that one. And we'll get to the reason just now why we don't use that one, in actual fact, very soon. So if you once you've done the second shot and it's on top of the other one, I do recommend going back and doing another shot with, oh, come on. Doing another shot there, because when the mirror is here and you make an adjustment, although the bigger adjustment happens here, you are adjusting the original position of the mark there. Not as much, but you are adjusting it. So you get it on, you move it back, put a fresh piece of tape on, make a fresh mark, and move the gantry all the way to the other side again, do another pulse, and get that on as close as possible with the two on top of each other. At that point, we're not too concerned on where it is on the mirror. We want to get them as close as possible on top of each other. So if we get to this stage where we've got this setting, so it's coming from there, it's hitting this mirror, but it's not hitting it in the center. We want to get to the center, and the way that we can achieve that is by using all the setting knobs. So if I can explain that, if you're hitting it too far behind, let me see if I can turn this in such a manner, that'll work. So if you are hitting that mirror on the outer side, you want to bring the lens, you want to bring the laser in a little bit, you have two options. If you have to move it more than the width of that 2 mil, in actual fact, call it, play that you've got on that unit, which we've measured, you need to again loosen these and move this whole mirror fitting, move it in. If you move that in, the laser hits it sooner, and the parallel laser, as you adjust it, moves this way, and I'm over exaggerating, moves this way, and that's how you get the laser beam to come either towards you, or you move this away to get the laser away. So that is the adjustment that you do. When you do adjust these, the slots that they have is hardly ever a perfect fit. So you're gonna lose, when you tighten it again, it's gonna be a few degrees out. So you're just gonna have to fine tune it again with the setting knobs. Once you fine tuned it with the setting knobs again to get them on top of each other, and you're still like a half a mil or millimeter from the center, you can then use, you can then use the setting screws to turn all of them in a little bit. If you turn all of them in, the mirror is going to come closer to the laser, and if the mirror comes closer to the laser, that means your spot is going to move on that mirror. The same if you turn them all in, the mirror is going to go farther away. If it goes further away, your laser is going to go that way, and you're going to move the dot there. Every time you do a setting like that, it is important just to do a shot over here again, take it there, do another shot, and make sure you get them on top of each other, get them perfectly parallel.
I think everybody wants to know what the wattage of that laser is that you got there, because it's like 100 gazillion, because that's a very thick beam you're holding in your hand.
It's a 1.2 gigawatt. It was delivered with a DeLorean. So then we can fine tune mirror 1 even further. And this makes a big difference since I discovered this way and started applying it. So before we move on to adjusting this mirror, there's one thing that we do just to check and make sure that everything is safe. So we move the head. See, I've got a moving head. Put your piece of waste MDF there again. So we know our laser is hitting the first mirror correctly and it's hitting the second mirror. It will hit this somewhere. Do a pulse, walk around, have a look, see where it is. Move it ever so slightly as you keep pulsing. And just to make sure where it's hitting and see what's happening there so that you don't, as Billy mentioned, miss the head or it goes up or sideways out of the machine, because now you are in the firing line, because most machines, the control pad is close to this. So you want to be safe and keep out of harm's way. So for this next setting, which we are still busy with mirror 1, we don't need a parallel setting at this stage because we're not going to move the head up and down. We just do that to make sure that we are hitting the head. And I can actually have a look. I am actually hitting the head, so that's not too bad. So exactly the same exercise which we did earlier. So we start over there. We give it a pulse. Let's just see how this goes. I don't think we're going to see the target as it hits, but we can see more or less where it hits. So we give it a pulse, see where it hits, bring it all the way down. Take note that we're not adjusting the position of this, of the head on the gantry. And we do our next pulse. And there I would have hit myself.
It stings like a bee, Carlo.
So you do the next pulse. The reason we're doing this is we are lengthening the path, which will make the error a little bit bigger if it is there, so that we can see it and fine-tune it. So if you check it in the first position, okay, in actual fact I'm going to leave it here, and you get here, and let me use a smaller pointer, and let's say we managed to hit the center of the target when we were here, and as we came here, the laser went up, and let's say we're hitting it there, which means the laser is traveling ever so slightly higher, and when it hits this, it'll still travel a little bit higher and hit it there. Although by this mirror, because this distance is so small from where you do the first sample and the second hit, there's not enough space for you to really see the variation in the height. But if we extend the area, so from there to here, and we make a longer path, we see the difference. And again, I'm over exaggerating. If you've got a nice one there as close as possible as you can, you should over here, doesn't matter where it hit, you'll see a small deviation, and with that you can adjust mirror 1 to get that onto the mark which we made when it was here, and you get a much finer adjustment on that one. So if I can explain that again, if this goes ever so slightly up, it's going to go ever so slightly up. So if you want to bring this down to the test mark, you got to bring this mirror down a little bit by turning the top adjustment in. If you turn the top adjustment in, the mirror goes down, the mirror goes down, the laser goes down, and you get closer to your mark that you made initially. Once you've done that adjustment and then it looks like it's on, go back, make a new test, bring it forward, have a look, because again, when you adjust for this towards the test mark, that setting affects the test mark again. So you are closer, but you got to make a test mark again, bring it this way and check it again. So that's for the up and down. If you find that when you get here, I'm going to use the smaller setting again, if you manage to hit the center, but when you do the test mark, you come this way, you manage to hit the center on the test, and here you are towards you, standing in front of the machine, which means the laser is doing this. So to bring that laser in, we're adjusting mirror 1 again. So if we adjust mirror 1 sideways, you will bring the laser that way. If you bring the laser that way, you'll hit this mirror on a slightly different position, and the beam will come this way towards that. Once you've done that, mirror 1 is set. If you get it spot on, let me get this here. If you get that spot on with that over there, and you bring it this way, you get that next fire spot onto this one, that mirror is set. You don't need to touch it again. You should be good to go on that one. Only after that we move to this one. Now we're going to adjust mirror number 2, and because we got that parallel, it doesn't matter where we do the setting. You can do it in the middle, you can do it close to you. That depends on the machine. Some machines have a flap that opens up, some swing open, some you can get in from the inside of the machine. So you can do it however it's comfortable for you to do the adjustment, and then it's a matter of doing the same again, taking the head all the way up to the mirror. You do a test shot, you bring it this way, and you do a test shot. And again, although we want to go to the middle of that, the object of the adjustment of these screws is to get the mark on top of the test mark which you did there. The objective here on this setting is to get this laser parallel to the gantry so that you hit this mirror, which I still need to build in. We're already working on plans for version 2, version 3, and version 4. So you adjust that, you take it back, you do another shot. Because the same as the others, when you do a setting, a test mark, and you shoot it again, and you adjust this one towards the test mark, when you do that setting, it's going to adjust the position of the test mark. So you got to go back again and get a test mark. And you go that route up and down until both of them are exactly in the same spot as best as you can get them. Again, on this one, the same applies. It shouldn't really be necessary to adjust the center knob. You can adjust that one for left and right. It'll pivot on these two. You can adjust that, the top one, for up and down. It'll pivot on those two. So you basically only need to adjust these two screws. Again, the same reason. If your laser, and let me just get this all the way down. Ooh, it's falling apart. If you've got it parallel, but you are on the side of the head, you need to loosen these screws and move this backwards or forwards depending on where the laser is hitting this. you first got to make sure that it's parallel. Once you've moved those, again, you're going to sit with the same challenge. When you loosen them and you move it ever so slightly forward or backwards, it's not going to be at the same angle. You have to tighten it, and you do the same setting again, forwards and backwards, until you get it parallel. If you do that, you should be a little bit closer to the center if you moved it the right way. Again, I'm saying if you're too far out, simply loosen that, move it ever so slightly forward. And one tip which I can maybe share with you, and I'm just going to turn it this way. So if I need to move this backwards or forwards, once I know that this is fairly, well, if it's parallel, I will take a little scribing tool and I will make a line on my machine up against that. So if I do loosen that and I move it ever so slightly, in actual fact, I'll make a scribing line on there as well, and you can even make one there. So that when you loosen it, they are normally quite stuck, if I can call it that. So you move it, it makes a big movement, you don't know where you are. If you made a little scribing line there, you can see where it was. It's like a history mark. You can move it back and you can judge with your eye, okay, I'm going a millimeter or half a millimeter forward or backwards. And if you make a slight scribing mark there, you can try and align it as best as you can with that line again after you've moved it. That will help you quite a bit. Although it will help, it's not going to be 100% the same, I can guarantee you that. Then you use the settings just to fine tune and get it parallel again. That's all you can do, or the only setting you can do with that is left and right. You cannot adjust this if your laser is too low or too high on here. Unfortunately, if you adjust your laser higher there, you're just going to change the angle and you're going to upset the parallel setting which you worked so hard on getting. So if your laser is low or high here, the only setting that you can do to get that higher, no, there's actually two options depending on your machine. Most machines or options are going to your laser tube and physically lowering or raising it there. That is the only way of changing that, because at this stage the path of the laser is parallel to the machine because of what we did. So the only way to get that a little bit higher, a little bit lower, is to use the adjustments on the brackets for your tube. I know some machines don't have adjustments for that, and the only way that you can get around that is if you improvise, put something under the tube. I normally use like a soft rubber, even a double-sided tape. Lift the tube up and I put it, let's call it the sponge rubber side, double-sided tape. I stick that onto the bracket and I lay the tube onto that, and you can pull it down with a cable tie ever so slightly so it stays in position. But for your height, to get that height perfectly on, your only option is to move the source up or down. Keep in mind when you move the source up and down, you don't want to move the front down. If you need to move the front down, you need to move the front and the back down. If you move just the front down and you do get bubbles in your water line, they will not get out of the tube and your tube will get damaged. So please keep that in mind. I think for tonight, we're gonna stop there, because the adjustment going into this head and going down here is pretty much as intense as what we did now up to this stage. And that, unfortunately, this high-tech model that we built does not have, it's missing a few parts, if I can say that. So The next one we will do at the machine, where we demonstrate exactly how we set this part up as accurate as we did with all the other mirrors. This is one part which we shouldn't neglect and pay as much attention to it, because getting back to what we said in the beginning, the objective is to make sure that we hit the center of the mirror, not the mirror, when we go down, hit the center of the lens and hit the lens perpendicularly. So yes, that's it from me for tonight on the laser alignment. I hope some of you learned something and that you can apply this on your machine, and then that it will increase your cutting speed, your cutting quality, and take away some of the headaches that go with this, because I know it can be frustrating. Please do not, this is one thing that I didn't think of. I wouldn't suggest you go into the machine and upset the settings before we covered the settings or the checks and the settings of the head. This video will be available at a later stage. So what I would suggest is, after we've done the next video where we show the setting of the head and how to ensure that the laser is straight on 90 degrees onto the lens and smack bang in the middle of the lens, only then I would suggest go and change, if you need to change the settings and do a fresh setup from the start. And I can promise you, if you do that from the start and you do it right, your machine, it's going to be like a new machine. It's so frustrating to cut something and you run a job, it cuts 3/4 of the sheet, it cuts fine, and it gets to the top right hand corner and the damn thing doesn't cut out. Yes, there's a couple of things that we'll go through with a final adjustment, and yes, we will do that on the next one. Which, Billy?
Yeah, I strongly suggest that when you go and pick your day to adjust your lenses and stuff, don't have a lot of jobs, don't have any jobs planned for the day, and in fact try not to have jobs planned for the next day either. And just take the day so you can relax, you can wake up, like a cup of coffee, a breakfast, and you can go and you can start speaking to those mirrors and start speaking to the machine, and you know nothing's chasing you. You've got 4 hours or 8 hours, and if you finish sooner, bonus, you've got spare time. But I book the whole day out, and if I finish early, then I do some other things on the machine and clean up. But sometimes you're lucky and you can align that thing in the first move you make, you align it and it's a dream. And then sometimes you actually have to work yourself backwards and forwards quite a few times to get it, until you figured out exactly what Carol was explaining, which buttons do. Once you got that figured out, you can do it quick. The only times it messes you around is like if anything's loose and you don't know something that should be tight is loose and it's moving around. That could be the only thing that messes you around then.
I actually had a situation where I was using the machine and I set it up and it was cutting fine. I did the alignment and everything is running hunky-dory, and I do quite a big engraving job, and after the engraving job I do some cutting again and the thing just wouldn't cut through. And I go through the alignment and I say, geez, the alignment is out. And I set the alignment again, go through the whole story. I run a couple of jobs. And then I realized every time I do an engraving job, the alignment goes out. And it was a simple thing that the little ring on mirror 2, I can't remember which one, it doesn't really matter. But the little ring that holds the mirror in place, that was not tight. So the mirror would jump up and down and flick along, and as you say, something so stupid, and so it can really ruin your day. So yes, check those things, and when you do the adjustment, don't lose hope and want to throw the thing away. Maybe just walk away, have a cup of coffee, and then come back. But I will put up a little cheat sheet, if I can call it that, on the steps that I follow on how I do this and how I explain this, so that you don't every time need to sit through an hour's video on how to do this. You can only watch it so many times. So we'll have that sheet, and Billy, I'm sure we can put that in the comment sections on the when the video is available, and have it there just for reference. Okay.
Okay, Raven just saying thank you for the cheat sheet and for the video, and also Tracy. Looking forward to part 2, so I think it's good if we do part 2 next week. Yeah, I think we're all interested now to see how we finish this.
So when we do part 2, I will also show the step test which I was talking about on the group earlier. I don't know, is there anybody else that does that, or is the ramp test the go-to?
I got my own blokkie haircut.
I don't like the ramp test, so I also have my own way of doing it.
Check with the eye.
Give me 1 second. Billy, keep the crowd entertained. I'm going to step away for 2 seconds, and I will show you something that I use for that. I'm going to be back in a second.
Well, I can tell you guys with that last mirror alignment that Carlo's going to do next week on step 2, he doesn't put paint or anything on the bottom of the nozzle and a thingy key and stuff like most of us do, or like most of us are given advice. He does something completely different. He blew my mind away when he showed me last week. I was like, I've been doing my laser alignment for probably 3 years myself now, and I've always gotten that last one. I've always basically actually gotten it wrong.
All right, so this is my little step test device which I use. So if it doesn't make any sense to you at the moment, sorry, let me see if I can go over to a different camera.
It's not making any sense at the moment.
It'll make a lot of sense next week, so I think we're going to do it next week. This is what I use to do my final adjustment and to make sure that I get the focal length from the height of the bed perfect to the best that it can be. Once I've done all the other settings, this is the last tool that I use, which I made, and I get the height of the bed perfectly so that I can get the best cut possible. So if nobody else is using this or something similar, so yes, then I'm very keen to show you how it works.
Carlo, there's 100 comments about that now, and it's not about what it is. Everybody wants to know if they can buy the file. They want to put the photos of their school kids in there.
Well, the file is not for sale. The file will be freely downloadable from our website. So yes, I will show you all about this next week and how I use this to make sure I get the best out of my machine.
Now you're just making sure that we'll all be back next week, because we need to see what that thing does now.
So we're getting all the anticipation going. Yeah, this has been with me for quite a while. I can't imagine my life without it. We've got a couple of machines running, and they all work different, and you can't always remember what's the height for each one, and run around with a little Perspex stocky, which I also have, but now I'm not going to go and fetch that now. It's a bit far away. So each machine, once we've set it, you check it, and yeah, then you're good to go. Yeah, thank you so much for everybody who joined in. We really appreciate it. It's nice to see everybody here and supporting the cause. And yes, I'm enjoying it, and this was a nice one, and we're going to keep the momentum for next week.
Thanks a lot, Carlo. It was very, very interesting. I certainly enjoyed it.
Lekker man. No, maar right.
Definitely, very interesting contraption.
Yeah, I think this is the last time we use this one. If we ever do something like this again, it will probably be version 4, and it will have some kind of wooden manufactured bearing rails or something.